Hi, it's iRacing commentator David Haynes. In 2019, I'm excited to be bringing coverage of the ChampCar Sim Series, the sim racing division of the ChampCar Endurance Series. Contested across 15 championship rounds using the 2015 Mazda MX-5, the winners will receive a free entry into a real ChampCar Endurance Series race in the 2020 season. Each points round will be broadcast live by HJBC. Head to forum.champcar.org for full information and schedule. Sign-ups are open, so get registered now. Best of luck, and I'll see you at the track. Welcome to HJBC, welcome to the ChampCar Sim Series, and welcome to Sebring International Raceway. It's round 11. We've got some points to give away tonight in the quest of finding who is going to become our Sim Series champion this year. It's getting to the pointy end of the season. The points and the wins getting very, very important. Qualifying is underway and just wrapping up now before our 1 hour race that we have coming up in these 2015 Mazda MX-5 Cup cars. Quite a few cars in the pits right now as the checkered flag waves. So there's only a few drivers out there that might be able to improve, and amongst those is Jay Safiniak, Chris Knisley, Justin Hall. 13 cars for the grid right now, and it might not be too important. So we are expecting a pit stop in this race. In fact, not just expecting, it's going to be absolutely required by the fuel limitation that these drivers have. So there'll be a little bit of strategy that the drivers can play. Jay Safiniak is not going to complete that particular lap that he's on. Aaron Thorpe crosses over the line. He remains 11th, but did improve to a 2:35.062. So definitely using some of this qualifying time for a bit of practice, find a little bit more time. David Palermo is not going to improve as he finds some of the barriers out there, and Chris Knisley and Justin Hall cross the line as well, and I do not see improvement for them on those 2 laps, but all seat time, is good experience. Our producer for tonight's coverage is Michael Derby. I'm David Haynes, and might have Andrew Fawcett joining me later for our 1 hour race. And all cars in the pit lane right now, but still 2 minutes left of the qualifying, so we have to wait for that to tick down before we'll get our racing underway. But Sebring, a circuit that the ChampCar Endurance Series visits relatively often, I would think, and a real staple of American endurance racing, with, I suspect, almost as much history as the Daytona 24 Hours, potentially more if memory serves correctly. So a fantastic venue for us to go racing. Old Air Force Base, of course, but if you think that means it's going to be flat, well, it is, but it's still bumpy and an uneven surface and a real challenge. Quite a long lap, lots of corners, braking zones to master. That's why we see almost a 9-second difference between our pole sitter John DeGallen and David Palermo, as we have so many corners around this circuit. Some of them slightly off camber, plenty of them bumpy, lots of variation to the curbing. Some you can jump over, some you need to avoid around here. So a more challenging circuit than you might initially suspect, out of a lot of the circuit being concrete runways and aprons and taxiways and such. So top three is certainly going to be John D. Allen, Mitchell Peake, and Alex Albert. And very close for second and third, as I see in the qualifying. And coming into this round, our main championship challengers are John D. Allen and Alex Albert. They've battled for the wins in previous rounds of this championship. The points are pretty close. I don't have the exact numbers on hand, but a win tonight would suit either of those drivers very, very grand. They would love that. Two drivers looking to race in the ChampCar Endurance Series next year. And the prize of this Sim Series on iRacing would very much help either of them get to a race of their choice and support their respective teams next season. Qualifying ticks over. We show our grid. First row for our rolling start. It's going to be John D. Allen and Mitchell Peake. And then behind that, Alex Albert is going to be alongside Bradley Adams for the second row. Third row, Justin Hall, a Florida native. Let's see if that gives him much advantage around here. He's going to have Chris Nicely for company. Then Tom Ellison, Jay Safianiak, 7th and 8th. 9th and 10th is Jacob Beenan and Lee Mullerman, two drivers we've seen before in this season, and they've got a couple of races under their belt. Let's see if that experience helps them out around Sebring. Aaron Thorpe in 11th. Joel Brownsey had 12th position, and David Palermo we saw with 13th, getting plenty of experience through the qualifying session. All of our cars now form up on the starting grid here behind the rather big black and white checkered flag painting that creates the start-finish line here at Sebring. They're going to have the Porsche safety car, which is probably significantly faster than these race cars, but it's going to pace them around for a whole lap of Sebring International Raceway before we get racing for 1 hour. Like I mentioned, fuel is going to be something the drivers might need to think about around here. The strategy in these races is that it's a fixed setup that starts with a limited amount of fuel. So the drivers can actually pit very early in the race and be able to fill the tank and get all the way to the end. Pit window effectively opens at lap 2 or 3 whenever you feel like it. And the amount of fuel they're going to need to take means that they can probably change a whole set of tires in that time as well, but it's 1 or 2 seconds difference. You can slightly cut down that pit stop without taking tires, but a new set do give you 2 or 3 really quick laps out of the gate. It's what we expect to see most drivers do. I think the fuel consumption around Sebring probably a little bit higher than some other circuits. There's plenty of straights where you're wide open throttle, maybe not as high as Daytona, for example, or maybe Road America, but definitely a little bit higher fuel consumption than something like Lime Rock Park or some other circuits where the corners just come up more often. There's probably plenty of 4th and 5th gear running around here. And as I mentioned, joining me for our coverage is going to be Andrew Fawcett. And how you doing?
I'm doing good, David. I'm glad to be here and looking forward to this race tonight.
Exactly. The story of this season, really, I think, has been John D. Allen and Alex Albert. And Alex is not on the front row of the grid here. He's starting out of 3rd. He was very close in qualifying with Mitchell Peake. So maybe we'll have that Canadian registered driver in here mixing it up amongst the championship battle between John D. Allen and Alex Albert.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, we've seen Alex and John D. Allen basically race each other every single race, and it's been a close battle between them. And throwing someone else in the mix could make things interesting. I definitely think that these two guys are not going to be putting up with any shenanigans.
Yep. Yes, indeed. And we've got plenty of other cars, plenty of other drivers to race each other behind that as well. I mean, I remember Justin Hall had a pretty good run at Mosport initially. He had some good speed there. Tom Ellison, definitely a driver who loves to jump into just about any car, and we might see those two racing each other deeper in the race as well.
Yeah, for sure. Justin and Tom are pretty evenly matched, I'd say. We've seen them battle it out previously in the season, so I think that'll be a good battle to look for.
One thing I'm seeing is, unfortunately, our fourth place qualifier, Bradley Adams, doesn't look like he's out there on the pace lap, which is, I think, sad to see someone with a bit of pace not take the start of this race. I don't think we'll see him, so that's unfortunate because we always want to see as many quick drivers as we can get, mix it up, and we know where the drivers stand relative to each other.
For sure. And looks like we're coming out of Sunset Bend here towards the green flag.
Yes, through the last corner they go. The pace car will pull in and is just about to, does so now. So now John D. Allen has control of the field. The green flag waves very quickly. So they are away and racing. John D. Allen got a pretty reasonable jump, but I see Tom Ellison in the background taking it 3 wide. Justin Hall and Jay Safinek. Clean for John D. Allen up front. They're still side by side for third, but behind there, Tom Ellison, blinder of a start, dives down the inside of turn 1, grabs a couple of positions. So too does Chris Knisley as well. So those two making a good jump. Knisley got the jump on Hall, and I think it's Hall who's lost out a little bit. Maybe he was sleeping on the start. He drops back a couple. Clean jump for the top 3. I think this battle over 4th position is what we've got our eyes most closely on. Knisley, Ellison, and Hall.
Yeah, great start from Tom. I think we've seen this season that he might have struggled a little bit with qualifying pace, but he does not lack that race pace. Making the start, you got to take up all the advantages you get. Get up front, make all the moves you can while the cars are all backed up, and he is doing just that because he makes a move there.
Yeah, Hall tried to come back at Ellison, and Tom defended the inside line into the hairpin, and there was just not enough room around the outside for Hall. Couldn't get the car turned in. Got to manage the understeer sometimes in these cars, and Hall just didn't have the sharpness of the turn in. And Ellison managed to defend 15th place from him, and right up behind them, I think Lee Mullerman has gone around, clipped one of the curbs, gotten unsettled, and gone into the barriers. And I think he's one of our first casualties of this race. He was fighting to try and stick close to Justin Hall. He's clipped one of the curbs, I think, a little bit too hard. I'm going to take a second look at that. What's that? Have you had a look at that one, Fawcett? I think he's just, as I mentioned, some of the curbs around here earlier.
Yeah. Looks like it just took a funny bounce off the curb and ended up in the tire bales. And these tire bales are not very forgiving here. So that is unfortunate.
Yeah, indeed, the car's just become unsettled. The damper's not working maybe how he would have expected. And kept the steering input, kept the throttle, and that spun up the tires, spun him around. And I think he's managed to get that thing out of the arm cone, out of the tire barriers, get it going again, but lost quite a significant amount of time and lost quite a bit of touch with the pack. And yeah, speaking about it, for the lead of the race, though, John D. Allen's been challenged. Mitchell Peake into the lead. Alex Albert alongside John D. Allen has the momentum out of the final corner. John D. Allen from the lead back into third. Alex Albert has a great run at Mitchell Peake, who just holds the middle of the road, thinks about defending the inside, but Alex Albert brave enough to go down towards the inside into turn 1. Albert from third into the lead of the race, just needs to get a good run through turn 1 and keep it on track. He can't quite do that, so Peake's going to come back into turns 2 and 3. Peake has his nose to the inside, grabs the lead of the race. That hangs Alex Albert out wide, and John D. Allen, a seasoned Miata and MX-5 racer, doesn't need another invitation. He puts his nose down to the inside, and Knisley in fourth is just sitting watching these guys go side by side for second place. Albert is going to have the inside for the next hairpin. That's great racing up the front.
Yeah, fantastic racing. And I think we're going to be seeing this all night. Turn 17 and turn 1 are both great passing opportunities. Lots of slipstream available, lots of different lines you can take. I think we're going to see this top 3, top 4 battling like that probably for the whole.
Yeah, I think the back straight definitely provides a good opportunity for the drivers to slipstream, stay close, make it difficult for the leader to get away. And then Sunset Bend, I mean, that's difficult to get right any day, any weather, in any car. And these, you see that the drivers just got to be careful how they manage the throttle and the brakes to get the car to turn in. If you've got a car that understeers or just is neutral tending towards understeer, Sunset Bend can be a bit of a nightmare. And I think that's what might have happened for John D. Allen. Not the end of his race, no dramas for him. He can just ride along in third. He's still just 6 tenths off the lead. And some of this battling for the top three has mean that Knisley, Ellison, and Justin Hall still in touch. And Justin Hall's riding up right behind Tom Ellison. Doesn't need to make a move at this point, just needs to stick close.
Yeah, I think Ellison is he's getting a little impatient. He knows he's a little bit quicker, I think, than Nicely, and he's trying to make that move. And I think that he's got to be patient. It's a long race here. You get an hour long race. You got to be a little bit patient and try to manage what you got. Obviously, there's a pit stop too, so you can use that as a part of your strategy. But yeah, I mean, top six basically is all straight in the line.
Yeah, within 2 seconds. So they come into Sunset Bend again. Peake leading the race, and I think he's got that down to a pretty tight line that might help him get the throttle open early enough to get a good run. Side by side, Hall and Ellison. Ellison's lost out a little bit there. I think Hall's got the momentum. Ellison has the inside, and they can fight all they want over fifth place, but if they fight too hard, lose touch of the draft off Chris Nicely, then they're going to be in some trouble. So they need to keep that in mind. Ellison will fend off Justin Hall for fifth and sixth. And John D. Allen right up behind Alex Albert in second. They're still battling each other. Great racing. This is what we like to see in an hour race like this, is no one's doing anything too crazy, but everyone is willing to make the look for the position, but they have some thoughts still for the fact that this is a long race. 54 minutes still to go. They've got a pit stop still to do, plenty of racing still to happen. You can see this is sort of, seeing the reach of their opponent kind of thing, just feeling out their opponent, and then we'll see some bigger punches thrown later, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, right now you're trying to save a little fuel. You're trying to see where your opponents are weak. You're trying to just lay low, just get to the end of the race with these kinds of cars and this kind of track. Draft is going to be a factor. So you're definitely going to want to, see where you're going to be able to make those last lap moves. Start planning, start.
the data. The moment I shift into fifth gear, the thing just like,
Yep.
like the start of the straight in like fourth gear, doing like 100. Welcome back to HJBC and round 11 Sebring of ChampCar Endurance Sim Series, and a little bit of technical dramas on our end here, unfortunately, for which we apologise, but there's been no dramas in the race. It continues and carries on, and John D. Allen and Mitchell Peake have formed a little bit of a breakaway, still racing against each other, have swapped positions a couple of times, but we suspect there may have been a slowdown for Alex Albert. He cut the course a little bit too hard, potentially, and may have had to have given up a little bit of the time, and that's dropped him away from the lead and formed sort of two packs up front. Got John D. Allen and Mitchell Peake about 2 seconds clear of Alex Albert, who's leading the train of Chris Knisley, Justin Hall, and Thomas Ellison, and they continue to battle amongst each other just a little bit, and this is going to be frustrating, I think, for Alex Albert. Andrew Fawcett.
Yeah, I mean, when you're battling for the championship, you definitely don't want to lose the draft to the front two, and getting a slowdown, especially on a drafty track like this, can be critical in ruining your race. So it's difficult. Now he's got to fight against Nicely and Hall here, who are right on his bumper, and Ellison not too far behind. So I think if he can regroup and put together some clean laps, he could probably drive back.
Yeah, it's not massively out of touch of the lead, and what he really wants is these two in front to continue to battle amongst each other so that he can maybe close up. It's not happening right now. Peake was leading earlier, and John D. Allen has the lead now, but since that he's grabbed the lead, he's almost just inching away and pulling Peake along with him. At this point in the race, I think the longest we can see these guys go on the fuel is probably to 35 or 40 minutes into the race, but they could stop now if they wanted to. So we're a little while away from when we expect the pit stops to happen. But Alex Albert's still going to need to be thinking about, can he make his pit lane time just a little bit shorter? That would help him bridge the about 2 seconds a gap he needs to do so. Justin Hall and Chris Knisley are going to swap places behind him, though, on the way into Sunset Bend, and I think Hall has just about grabbed that. They'll continue to battle down the front stretch, past the pit lane and over the start-finish line. Albert clear in front of them. Hall and Knisley are going to battle it out over fourth.
Yeah, the best thing you can see in your mirrors right ahead in front of you is people battling side by side. That's the best thing you can see. So, these guys battling, giving Albert a little, reprieve, pull a little gap, get out of their, draft range. That's
Yeah, indeed. And behind that, Thomas Ellison was trying to stay in touch. He went all four wheels through the dirt and maybe kept the throttle pinned too. So turn one's a bit deceptive here, really. It should be a flat 90-degree corner, but where is the apex against that concrete wall? Who knows? And then on the exit, trying to get the power down can be difficult. Ellison's going to go to the inside of Knisley. Knisley's going to lose 2 spots in less than a lap. And Tom Ellison's going to be all 4 wheels through the grass once again, racking up a couple of off-track incident points, but it wouldn't worry him too badly. So Knisley gets the better exit and is going to think about challenging him back after the little S's. And down towards this bend here, backs out of it, I think. It's decided that's not quite the way to go. And these 4 cars in this train, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, it's starting to spread out just a little bit more as they battle like this. And yeah, so they're still all within the draft of each other, but they're not as densely packed as they were earlier. And Albert trying to break away, but I think he's still just pulling Justin Hall along with him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that I'm seeing John DeAllen. You know, the last couple laps he's pulled out, 2 or 3 car lengths. He's starting to stretch that lead a little bit, and that is not what Alex Albert wants. You don't want to see that guy check out, and then then he's out of touch. You really want Mitchell to catch up, get back into racing each other. So we'll see how this develops. But John DeAllen looks like he's developing quite a little bit of a lead here.
Let's call out the rest of the field, though, because great battling up front, but there's still plenty of other cars running. Jay Safianiak is in 7th, and Aaron Thorpe in 8th. And the last lap around, Thorpe was actually quicker than Safianiak, so we might see those two close up and battle each other later on. Who knows? And then Jacob Beenan running in 9th, has a little bit of no man's land, a little bit of space to himself. Lee Muhlman in 10th, and Joel Brownsy in 11th. Was quicker than Mullerman last time around as well, so we might see some of those guys close up for a little bit of action later on. Who knows? They're still out there, still running, being scored laps, and I think you get paid out points so long as you run 50% of the number of laps of the leader, and there's points well down in the order as well. So those guys are going to pick up some points today if they just keep running as they are.
Last time by, John DeAllen set the fastest lap of the race at 2:32.1, almost 2/10 clear of what Mitchell Peake did. So John DeAllen's got that gas pedal down, and he is
motoring along indeed. I'll have you take a look at what the track temperatures are, because I've got them in non-freedom units, but yeah, the track temp's not especially cool here, so I think for John DeAllen to set a quick lap like that as deep into the stint as he has, he's probably already used up the best of the tires, and the best of the tires can wear down a little bit when the track temperature is what it is.
Yeah, I'm reading 99 degrees Fahrenheit, which, to be frankly honest, for here in Central Florida is not that hot track temp. I mean, I think during the 12 hours of Sebring here, we see track temps in the high one teens, up to 125 degrees. So track temp's not as high as it could be. Ambient here is 76 degrees. So I don't think the track is quite as hot as it could be, which is, as a driver, is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a warm track, but I'm not going to say a blisteringly hot track. A clear day, sun out, and morning session here, so 10:15 in the morning in the sim, sun continuing to rise higher in the sky, and the track temp is certainly warmer than it was during qualifying and the practice, though, so that's one consideration.
Yeah, definitely. And the track temp is only going to go up from here. I mean, it's morning time, headed towards noon. I mean, the track will not get any cooler. So I definitely expect the pace to drop off as tires fall off and as the track temp gets higher. And this 3-car train here for third is getting a lot tighter, as Ellis and Hall have kind of dropped nicely off the back of.
Nicely still there and thereabouts, but certainly Hall and Ellison are keeping Alex Albert in check at the moment. The lap times very, very similar this time across the line, but Ellison actually had a pretty good one, managed to use some of the slipstream to close up somewhat. It's still anyone's game from these guys third on down, but they have dropped to now 5 seconds off the lead of the race. It was only 3 or so seconds earlier, so Allen is putting in those laps. He's the fastest car out there consistently, and he's got just a little bit more pace than Alex Albert at this stage. The sway of the race is going to the favor of those top two, and their pack is getting away from these other guys.
Yeah, at this point, if I'm Alex Albert, I might consider pitting. I mean, you're out of the draft of the two.
Oh, he's gone very deep into the hairpin, and then Hall has gone wide along with him. Ellison tried to get up the inside. They had a little bit of a bump. It's all returned to the status quo, but there was a little bit of excitement there. Continue your point, though, because I think I know where you're going with it, and I agree.
Well, I'm just thinking, you're towing along these two guys behind you, and you're not getting the draft from the guys ahead of you. So it might not be the most interesting thing, but pit now, maybe take some tires, take your fuel to make it to the end, and just hot lap. You don't have pressure from behind, and you can just set consistent laps and hope that you can pull away from the guys behind you and maybe catch the guys ahead of you.
Yeah, I think a pit stop would probably take him around 20 seconds or so. It'd put him 26 seconds off the lead of the race. It'd put him out behind Jay Safianiak and Aaron Thorpe, but probably ahead of Jacob Bean. And there's really not too much traffic back there. It's really only two other cars he'd end up behind. It's certainly a possibility for Albert, and maybe he'll think about it as they get towards the halfway point of the race. He might try and come in around then, which would be maybe 5 minutes or 3-4 laps earlier than what everyone else can do. I mentioned it earlier, Aaron Thorpe in 8th, catching Jay Safianiak in 7th, and it's happening slowly, so we'll probably have our eyes on that later in the race. That's something to watch on the timing screen. I think John D. Allen leading, that's 7/10 or so over Mitchell Peake, and then this train. Albert leads them into Sunset Bend. He takes a very tight line. It was maybe slow in, fast out to what he's aiming for. He does get the throttle open earlier than the guys behind of Hall, Ellison, and now Knisley is well and truly back in there, right underneath that rear bumper of Tom Ellison and following whichever way he goes.
Smart there. He puts the bumper to the back of the Ellison machine, trying to get that bump trap, trying to get the cars forward. He knows racing here is not the most important thing. It's about staying in the draft. Ellison, Justin Hall, and Nicely, all three go wide of the exit of turn.
Yeah, all came in pretty fast to turn 1, a bit hot, bit of an early apex, pushed out wide as the track temperatures continue to rise, and that happens sometimes when you're racing in the pack. You lose sight of your own braking markers, and you just start using the car in front as a reference. Hall went wide and well wide, and Ellison followed him, and Knisley followed him, and it's sort of. Did your mum ever say, if all your friends jumped off a bridge, would you do it?
That's exactly what
I don't know. They're just
there.
following exactly what the guy in front did, and that's classic pack racing.
Oh yeah, classic. I mean, you're focused on the rear bumper of the guy ahead of you. You can't see the track really, or your markers. You're kind of depending on him to, hit the brakes and turn in. So you follow his turn in point. Well, when he turns in a little too early, then you turn a little too early, and then you're all going wide. Luckily, they all kept it together. Turn 1 here, you can drive through the grass and not lose too much time, so it isn't really too detrimental, but it's definitely a bit of a scary moment.
Yeah, exactly. There's not grip there. You do have to be careful. It's possible to go for a spin out there, but as long as you open up the steering angle, don't try to rejoin the track too quickly, don't make any sharp inputs out there on the dirt, you can probably keep the throttle pretty well pinned, and they all got away with that, didn't lose track of Alex Albert. But yeah, what feels like a normal speed to enter a corner and to carry through can really be misled by what the car in front is doing, and it was a funny moment for sure there.
Looks like the battle here for 7th place is heating up as Aaron Thorpe has caught J-So.
Yeah, Safianiak had a good start to this race, had some gap on Aaron Thorpe, but I think Aaron Thorpe has really just settled down through the race, found some rhythm, and called it out maybe 10 minutes ago, been just a second or so a lap quicker consistently, and has now gotten up to Safianiak. Thorpe started deep in the field and has been working his way up. We've had Hall, Ellison, and Knisley all coming to the pit lane. Alex Albert stays out, so that's an interesting call from those guys, jumping in early. Maybe they're seeing the track temperatures rise, thinking a new set of tires would be a great idea.
We are about halfway in this race, or just past halfway, so not a bad time to stop and get fuel and tires. It's a good mental break the race into 2 halves. I think that's probably what these guys are thinking. We got half the race done, get in, get some tires maybe and some fuel, get back out there. This is probably good news for Albert, as he can kind of get his head down for the next couple laps and see if he can break away from.
Yep, I see all three of those cars go up on the jacks, both sides. All four tires changed for those guys, and 22 seconds stationary for Hall, and he gets out with just a little bit of gap in front of the other guys, and Hall is going to come out right behind Jacob Beenan, who hasn't pitted. So Hall might need to get on past that quickly. Hall is broken away from the other guys through the pit stops. And again, like we expected, brand new tires for all of these guys. They might be able to affect just a little bit of an undercut. We'll see if Albert responds and comes in this time. But interesting to see the pit strategy playing out now. All three of those guys into the pits for fuel and took a set of tires while they were doing it.
Yeah, it looks like Justin was about maybe a second quicker in his box, which translates to quite a bit of time out there on the track. So, his pit crew and him doing a good job there on pit road, getting out, in and out of the box. It'll get you a lot of track.
Yeah, the one thing he's got to think about now, though, is he's come out right behind Jacob Beenan, who Hall should, in theory, be quite a bit quicker than. He hasn't immediately gotten clear, but he's looking to the inside, trying to break deeper than Beenan, not able to do it. This is costing Hall a little bit of time that I think will let Ellison and Knisley catch up to him. I think Hall needed to be very decisive, use that fresh grip, those fresh tires to barge on through, and I think he'll get it done this time. Makes it look easy. I think Beenan knows that wasn't his fight.
Yeah, it's hard when you come out behind a lapper. I mean, he's still racing on the same lap. He's not really a lapper, but he's
up the front. John D. Allen faked into the pit lane, didn't take it. Mitchell Peake has followed him in, and then John D. Allen jumped out of the pit lane. John D. Allen's tried to shake Mitchell Peake. Peake into the pits. Allen stays out. Alex Albert stays out. That was it. You see that sometimes maybe in stock car racing behind the pace car, not in endurance racing like this in the Mazdas and under green flag conditions. That was really interesting. John D. Allen was probably thinking about the pit lane, saw Peake try and follow him in, and then jumped out. That was interesting strategy.
Yeah, I've never seen that under green flag conditions, but interesting strategy. Getting ahead of your competitors and try to get out of.
I mean, we hear it in Formula One, box, do the opposite of the car in front. So if you see him coming in, actually then stay out. But to see it done when it's the car behind you, trying to duke them out, do the opposite of what the car behind you does. Quick reaction times, that's going to be a slow lap, potentially, from John D. Allen, because he had to check up a lot through Sunset Bend and then get back on the throttle for that straight. Yeah, I guess he just didn't want to do exactly the same thing as Mitchell Peake, who he'd been towing around for half an hour now.
Yeah, it looks like we got Aaron Thorpe onto pit road. He had caught Jay Sofiniak, but I think he's trying the undercut here to see if he can get by him through the pits.
Yeah, and it's certainly worked a little bit for Justin Hall. He's just a second clear of Tom Ellison. So, yeah, Hall might have been able to break away, but I think the opportunity might have just gone. How it has worked for is Hall and Ellison, though, because Knisley wasn't able to get past Jacob Beenan as quickly as he wanted, lost a little bit of time there. So Hall and Ellison may have shaken Chris Knisley. We'll see. I mean, what Alex Albert will do in the pit stops, where he can come out relative to those other guys. And yeah, long lap around here in these cars, 2.5 minutes green flag, and 3 minutes when they come through the pit lane. So we still wait for them to complete a couple more laps to see the relative pace of the guys who've taken tires and those that haven't. I'm watching John D. Allen again. Is he heading for the pit entry? Yes, he is this time. So just one lap longer after faking out Mitchell Peake. John D. Allen wanted the pit lane, decided he still had maybe a lap more of fuel. I think we'll see a lot more guys come in now, though, because we're reaching the point where I don't think they can go longer on fuel. Albert into the lane as well. I think it's about pit stop time for everyone. It can probably only go one lap longer than this.
Yeah, I'll be watching Mitchell Peake here. I'm very curious to see. John D. Allen did really check up. I'm not sure that was intentional, faking that pit and not pitting. I think that it really hurt his momentum down the straight. So I'm kind of interested to see here where Mitchell Peake is going to cycle out with that, let's call it a mistake.
Yeah, so tires for John D. Allen. Pretty quick stop. He's out and away. Alex Albert probably also cut it a little finer on fuel than I think we saw some of the other guys do. A bit of a longer stop, second longer stop for Albert than it was for John D. Allen. So that really, really hurts his chances. He comes out 10 seconds behind Allen. Peake had a very long stop. I didn't catch that, but Mitchell Peake has come out 6 seconds behind John D. Allen. Or should I say John D. Allen has come out still 6 seconds ahead of Mitchell Peake. So drama's in the pit lane there for Mitchell Peake. Maybe he just didn't have the fuel number right. Maybe he's taken just a couple too many gallons. Safiyaniak, Beenan, Mullerman, everyone through the pit lane this time.
Mitchell Peake has spun coming onto the straight leading to the hairpin into the wall.
So from second place, big dramas there for Mitchell Peake. He went out too wide onto the dirt and too sharp of a steering input out on the dirt, spins into the tires. He might just get away with that, but it's cost him a lot of time. Justin Hall's gone through, Alex Albert's gone through, Chris Knisley's gone through, Tom Ellison has gone through. And interestingly, that undercut from Justin Hall has got him out ahead of Alex Albert. So Hall in second, but with Albert for very, very close company. Those two are more than a second clear of Chris Knisley. And Tom Ellison had a slow one last lap around as well. 2 seconds slower than Chris Knisley. Ellison might have picked up a slowdown on his previous lap. Suddenly, all the action happening in the last 2 laps.
Yeah, this is definitely action-packed. You know, that mistake that Mitchell Peake made is very easy to do. That corner definitely gets a lot tighter towards the exit of the corner. And we were talking about going through the dirt earlier. You can do it, but as we saw there, it can bite you.
Yep, certainly. And that's one of those corners where the exit curb is rather sharp. And I think, which it isn't on the exit of turn 1. So his Peake has gone over the curb and onto the dirt. Jumping up over the curb has got the car a bit loose. And then once the car's loose on the dirt, he had a hard time saving it. The exit of turn 1, you can get away with it more because it's such a smooth transition off the racing circuit and onto the dirt. It doesn't upset the car. Pack has reformed over second place. Albert has gotten by Justin Hall, but their little battle has let Chris Knisley be a lot quicker and close up there.
Yeah, that slow stop really is hurting Tom. I mean, he kind of dropped back behind this pack in the slow lap. It definitely had a rough few laps here in the middle of this race, but you know, he'll catch up. He'll get there, and I'm confident that there'll be a very a 4-person battle for second place.
Yeah, because Albert's just pushed very, very wide through Sunset Bend. Hall and Knisley were very close, and it looked like maybe they were going to battle and let Albert get away. Then that mistake from Albert's dropped him back a couple of tenths and got Hall back in the slipstream and back in the draft again. And Hall takes a much later apex through turn 1, gets on the throttle early. Albert pushed out wide there again, really struggling to get the car turned in. And that's one of the things to think about because it's a fixed setup for these cars in this league. So everyone running the same roll bars, same suspension settings. The car's maybe a little bit more neutral, slightly tighter to drive than some people might otherwise pick. Some people like to drive these cars like they're go-karts, very loose rear end but pointy, and you can put the nose where you want. We're going to look at this battle, this little train, second, third, and fourth on board from the 4th place man, Chris Knisley, and you can see what he's seeing of the guys in front for about a lap. seeing that there is a reason they sometimes call Sunset Bend the corner of 1,000 lines, because you can do one apex, late apex, early apex, no apex. Alex Albert and Justin Hall took two very, very different lines through there, and Chris Knisley, I think, probably had the better one, but you just never know. And through turn one, where these guys have struggled before, again, Hall goes all four tires onto the dirt. Knisley nearly follows him all the way out there, kept it just a little tidier. And as these guys, battle here and in this train, it has to be said, John D. Allen is romping away with the lead of this race. A clever move, I think, from him to try and pit on a different lap than Mitchell Peake. And that's let Allen be now untroubled in the lead of the race.
Yeah, this battle here for 7th position has not let up, as Aaron Thorpe goes 4 tires off the grass just as he's catching onto the back end of Jay Sophie.
Yeah, and these guys were battling right as we got to the pit stop time, and then Thorpe, who looks like he's about to make the same mistake as Peake, but just holds on to it. I thought we were going to see a repeat incident there. He ends up all 4 tires in the dirt there, but just managed to catch the slide. Yeah, well, Thorpe had a 3-second longer pit stop than Jay Safiniak. Maybe took an extra gallon of fuel, I don't know. Thorpe had been catching Safiniak in the early stages and then has lost out in the pit stops, and now trying to catch him again in the remaining 20 minutes of this race. And that means about 8 or so laps to go for all of our competitors. The really long lap around here, at least for these cars, means that most of your field, I think all but one, are still on the lead lap and will probably stay on the lead lap. Different to what we might have seen at Road Atlanta or some of the other shorter laps that this series has gone to. Most Sport, for example, that's a pretty quick one compared to around here at Sebring.
Yep, 3.7 miles. So it's a larger.
Yeah, indeed. Slow lap that time by for Hall and Knisley. And Hall is now almost a second and a half behind Alex Albert. And Albert's shown some quick laps, some good pace, but he's just had such, I think, poor luck with being able to break away from the pack. Hall has been consistent, Knisley's been consistent. Tom Ellison is still only 2 seconds behind those guys down the road, and probably frustrated he's just not quite picking up the slipstream off them. Last time around, John D. Allen set the fastest lap of the race again, so he's really, really settled in. Doing well for himself there at 2 minutes 31.8, even though the track temperature has continued to rise just moderately. It's got to be
reading about 103 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, that's probably the sort of wouldn't want to walk barefoot on the pavement temperature, but not not too hot.
Yeah, and I think Justin Hall is definitely pushing hard. I'm seeing him. He overcooked the hairpin here. He overcooked the next corner. He is pushing hard to get to Alex.
Yeah, I see the gap there is about 1.6 seconds, and that's just not quite close enough. And he's pushing once again. And the thing is, as I've mentioned, with this setup is when you're pushing, you're pushing. He's missing the apex in a couple places. The car is understeering. When you get in just a little bit too hot, when you try just a bit too hard, the result can be understeer, and it scrubs away at the front tires. So you've got to be just a little bit zen with making these cars go quick.
Yeah, you can get into your head too. I mean, you think, well, I got to brake later and later and later, and then you're braking too late, and you're not carrying the speed through the corner. So it's a fine balance to find, and it's often difficult when you got a guy right on your.
He's done it well this time, though. Hall's within a second of Albert coming down the back straight, and I think Albert's taking a line that was not fully trying to shake the draft there, but Hall might have missed a shift because then all of a sudden he lost a bit of time. Regardless, down the front stretch they go, and Hall and Albert just second and a half apart there. Hall's on for a podium position, but he just can't close up on Albert. Knisley's been shook a little bit behind. So they spread out, and I think this is just the guys pushing too hard. Is once you try and drive the car aggressively, the front tires stop responding. There's the limit of the grip, and the moment you go past it, the car's like, no, don't feel like turning in.
Yeah, understeer is definitely not a fun thing to be dealing with, especially in these light little cars where maximizing your corner exit speed is crucial to the lap time. So it doesn't make sense, logically to yourself. Maybe it's best to slow down a little bit, take a lap, cool off the tires, and you might get some of that front grip back. But one of those things that's easier said than done.
Yeah, especially when you're maybe, for example, in the racing shoes of Alex Albert, and you're thinking, if I give away, half a second on this lap to, try and get the car back underneath me, I don't have that margin, that comfort factor to do that. If I let off anything on this lap, Justin Hall's going to be all over my rear bumper, and I'll never get rid of him. And I think Knisley's fallen victim to that as well, and Thomas Ellison, who maybe had that comfort to be able to, regroup, rebuild. It's now right with Chris Knisley, and we've got two car kind of battles here now, Albert and Hall, and then they're just getting away from Knisley and Ellison.
Yeah, Hall has not let go of the back bumper of Albert as he gets a really great run out of Le Mans and onto the back straight. This is a fantastic run for him. He's definitely gonna get to the bumper. He's not let up. He is going after that second place, and I think it's safe to say that John D. Allen has checked out, and I think this is the race for second.
You know what I've just seen is Hall was a second shorter in the pit lane than all of these other guys. He was really closing up on the backstretch, got to about fifth gear, and then just eased out of the throttle a little bit. There might be just the tiniest bit of fuel concerns for Justin Hall. And one thing to think about in a race like this that's run to time is when you start the race, you don't know exactly how many laps it's going to be. It all depends on the pace of the leader, and the pace of John D. Allen has been pretty ferocious, been pretty quick, especially compared to these guys, Albert and Hall here. Allen's still going, a second and a half a lap faster than these guys. The race might end up looking like it's going to a lap longer than Hall expected.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. I mean, I think Allen has not lifted. He is pushing hard, and this race might go an extra lap, and it might be that Justin hadn't accounted for that extra lap. So we'll have to see how it pans out. But I mean, like you said, a second less in the pits and lifting there. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's nursing a little bit of a fuel save.
And then we talk about, if you do end up having to go one lap longer than you maybe were expecting or planning on, that one extra lap, we said at 3.7 miles around here. So it's, you can burn plenty of gas in 3.7 miles if you're trying.
Yeah, and a lot of these track is straightaways. I mean, there's not a lot of off throttle moments, so it's difficult to save. Or I mean, not that difficult to save around here because you have these big braking moments, but it's also hard to save because you're full throttle most of the lap. So if he's a little short, he could probably save it. If he's a lot short, he might be screwed.
So basically 5 laps to go, getting towards the last 10 minutes of this race, and your rundown is John D. Allen away and clear 20 seconds, but then second through to fifth, still all to play for, as Ellison's going to go down the inside of Chris Knisley at Le Mans. Knisley might have got too hot into that section, which is a quick change of direction, and that really punishes the understeer as well. If you're turning left and then suddenly you've got to be turning right, the quick direction change can be hard. So those guys, as they've battled, And this is the point of my rundown here, is Mitchell Peake, who unfortunately picked up a bit of damage, picked up some problems, and went for a bit of a ride and didn't have a good pit stop to boot. He's now on the back of them as well, so 6th place. Mitchell Peake obviously hasn't sustained too much damage to that car because he's there and thereabouts in this great battle we're having over the remaining steps of the podium. And then behind that, Safiniak and Thorpe, who we've been hoping and crossing our fingers for a great battle between those two that just hasn't quite developed. They're still just a couple seconds apart on the racetrack. And then Jacob Beenan still running in 9th. 10 seconds behind him, Lee Muhlmann. So not decided there, especially if Muhlmann can pull out a couple quick laps. He was quicker on the last time. And Joel Brownsy still running 1 lap off the lead. We've got to bring our attention back, though, because Albert went a bit wide, lost a bit of time to haul, but those two still getting away from what's becoming a bit of a elbows out battle over 4th, 5th, and 6th. Everyone was a little bit more polite, a little bit more gentlemanly in the first 10 minutes of this race. Now they're fighting harder for position, losing a little bit more time, and Ellison defending a bit harder, I think, against those 2 cars he's got behind him.
Yeah, it's coming down to that part of the race where you start to decide if you can catch the guy ahead of you or if you defend for the position you're in. As we watch Nicely look down the inside, but he's not going to get there. Just showing his nose, saying I'm here and I'm going to look for any opportunity to get by you. I watched Ellison go wide in turn 1 again, so he's definitely pushing it to stay ahead. And the more these guys battle, Mitchell Peake, who we know has some pace, is catching up as Tom goes wide there through Tower, and he's giving it all she's got.
Yeah, no doubt. He did that, and Knisley was maybe watching it, lost a bit of speed, and Peake's right up behind him. When we saw that spin and that contact for Mitchell Peake, he lost a lot of the time with the spin and ended up facing the wrong way, but it wasn't actually a particularly hard hit on the front left against the tyre barrier, so I don't think he's carrying too much damage. He's right up behind Knisley, who's getting a good slipstream off Tom Ellison. Albert and Hall are close as well. This is shaping up to be a very exciting finish, I think.
Yeah, Hall has slowly, been eking away a little bit, getting a little bit every little lap, and he's slowly catching Albert, and he's got 8 minutes to do so. He's got about 4 laps. I mean, he's making the charge up there, and Nicely, Peake, and Ellison are all battling it out for 4th place. So it's definitely
was wide through Sunset. Peake came on through. So
yeah, there you go.
Nicely now also struggling. Oh, Ellison is washed out hard through turn 1. Peake on the normal line. Just couldn't get the throttle open early enough, though. Ellison kept it on the pavement. Peake is, I'm not going to say it, having a look, though. He did have a good look at Tom Ellison. So I think he's got the pace. He looks like he's got the racecraft too. So those are 2 different things in these cars. You can be quick in clean air, but you've got to also be quick through the pack. I think Ellison's giving this one up. Left the inside open. Peake's going to come on through down towards the hairpin. Knisley's taking a look as well, but can't be brave enough on the brakes. Peake got on the stoppers at the right time, gets the throttle open. He's moved up from 6th into 4th.
This might be a smart move by Tom. He might feel that Peake is quicker. He knows he's quicker. Obviously, he was up there leading laps. He might say, "Hey, go ahead through. Maybe I can follow you and try to break away from Nicely." Although Nicely is looking.
Yeah, it's sort of a half-hearted move there from Knisley, where he's, a car width to the inside, but with no overlap, threatening to try and outbrake Tom Ellison, but then doesn't. So he's just costing himself time, costing Tom time, not actually, in a position to make a move or bold enough to give it a go. They just got to think about, do they lose touch with Peake? Because if they battle Ellison and Knisley, they will, and Peake will get on away. But if Knisley just follows along with Ellison for a bit, I think Ellison still has the speed to stick with Mitchell Peake.
Yep, Tom definitely has to get a good run here onto the straight, but I definitely think that as I hear Nicely going off onto the grass, so it looks like Nicely might have been falling off the back.
Yeah, indeed. And then second through Sunset. Just been one of the most difficult corners on this circuit for all of these guys, just struggling with where's the apex, where can you get the throttle open. Pretty even for Albert and Hall. Hall doesn't need to overdrive it and isn't. And I think the last 2 or 3 laps, Hall has just been that comfortable 3-4 tenths behind Alex Albert, where he can still pick his braking markers. He's not under any pressure, but then he's also not at risk of dropping too far behind Albert. So that'll be one to watch, I think, on the final lap. Hall keeping his powder dry at the moment.
Yeah, I haven't seen Hall make any big gains here. He's slowly catching him, but catching him and passing him, as they say, is entirely different thing. So, I think getting by Albert is going to be a challenge. He's obviously a championship contender, and he is not looking to give up any points at this point, especially with John D. Allen having such a dominant drive.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting to think that I think the implications for that championship of Albert finishing second or third is pretty significant. As for Justin Hall, maybe he'd want to spring one over Alex, but I don't think Hall is as much in the championship fight. He'd still stand on the podium either way. So, I mean, teammates, friends, Alex Albert, how much does Hall... I think that factors in here on the final lap, if I'm honest. I think there's a point where Justin Hall is aware how much the championship would mean, not just, personally, but financially as well to Alex Albert. And I think Hall might be somewhat sympathetic to that on the final lap. I think that plays into it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the crew chief is up there on the radio saying, "Hey, man, maybe we just give him this one. Let the team boss take it here and come away with the podium." So we'll see how hard he fights him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he just kind of lets him go.
I wouldn't be surprised either way. I give it like a 50-50. Hall, tries to battle Alex Albert on the final lap, or goes, I'm not in the fight for this championship, but if Albert is, if he picks up that prize of a free entry for next year, we're going racing, boys.
Yeah, we have to consider all these guys, they're ChampCar drivers. They all want to go racing. And, when your team owner wins the race and wins the championship, means, you get to go racing. So there is a little bit in there for Justin Hall to let Alex go. But this battle for third here is not given up, or fourth.
Yeah, indeed. By my count, starting 2 laps to go as they've crossed the line this time. So about time to be elbows out for Peake, Ellison, and Knisley. Peake, like I thought, he closed up to those guys. He worked through them, but he hasn't gotten away. Ellison still following along. Peake gets some of the tires on the dirt where he had the issue a couple laps earlier. I think that's going to compromise his run down towards the hairpin. Ellison might not be close enough, but yeah, they're definitely going to be within range for those 3 to battle hard now and onto the final lap. Peake has not been able to shake them.
He's playing with fire here by going off in the same spot that he crashed, that's for sure. But I definitely think it's going to come down to...
Yes, it'll come down to the wire indeed. It's so good to have a fantastic race like this, a cracking battle on our first race back after the break. Because, from second through to 6th, we've got under 5 seconds separating these guys battling for championship points, and they've been battling all race long. Very reassuring, and I love to see it.
Yeah, Peake lost a little bit there. He dropped 2 tires in the grass, and Ellison is right there to capitalize. If he does it again, goes to... Peake is playing with fire here. He's gone off the track several times in this lap alone, and Ellison sees it. He's there and he's ready to...
He had a big wiggle in the dirt out of tower that time as well, which again was not only a scary moment, but it probably meant he had to lift out of the throttle a little bit to hold on to it. Heading towards Le Mans here, Ellison's trying to set up a better run on the exit here. I think Peake has it this time. Knisley still well and truly in touch. Under a minute left on the clock. John D. Allen has gone over the start-finish line and seen the white flag. I do believe it'd make sense. 30 seconds or so left. So we're going to start the final 3.7 miles of action, and I think this is going to be a good one.
Yeah, coming onto the start finish straight. Here we go. Peake is onto the start finish straight nicely, right on the back bumper of Ellison. I think this is really where we're going to see the battling here at the last lap. I'm not sure Justin is quite close enough to make the move on Albert, but I definitely think that this battle here for fourth is where it's at.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, for all the run that Knisley had over the final corner, he didn't make a move into turn one, and Ellison looks for all of the momentum he can carry through there, and that gets him right up and close to Peake. But when can he make a move? Where is an opportunity for Tom Ellison? Peake through the corner that's been a bit his bogey this race, and he keeps it on the paved stuff. And you know what? For good measure, on the final lap, we'll have a battle between Jake Safieniak and Aaron Thorpe as well. This has been fantastic. So, second and third, Albert still leads Hall. Peake, a couple car lengths over Tom Ellison. Might have to be a mistake from Peake at this point. Knisley almost gives a tap on the rear quarter to Tom Ellison through the hairpin. Knisley right up behind Ellison.
Yeah, Sofniak and Thorpe said, "Hey guys, we heard you guys are having some fun battling. We'd like to do so." As they come into this hard braking zone. Nicely is really close to Ellison, looking to make him.
Yeah, I think at this point, Tom Ellison, a lot of the pressure is from behind, and he's not quite close enough to Peake to worry him. Don't know where to look on the final lap right now, if I'm honest, because great battles here and there again for Ellison. All four tires in the dirt. Lee Mullerman jumps into the pit lane with 1 lap to go. He didn't have enough fuel, I don't think. So that might have been, again, then the concern for Justin Hall.
You know, I'm watching this race here for second place, and Hall has not lifted off. He is going for it, and he looks like he's going to get a good run here out of Le Mans. Oh, a little bit of grass, but he is still right on the bumper of Albert. This might be a drag race, the start-finish line, as well as Peake, Ellison, and Knisley, all three in a train behind them. So definitely not.
Yeah, Albert went all the way almost to the right-hand wall there. Now he's going to defend into Sunset. A little bit of overlap. Hall around the outside in Sunset Bend. I think Hall's washed out a little bit. Can he bring it back to a late apex and get the throttle open earlier than Albert? Potentially, Albert goes a little wide, but I think he's got that one. John D. Allen's already taken the win here in dominant fashion. Albert gets second ahead of Hall. Peake, Ellison, Knisley. They finish in that order, and I think Ellison and Knisley was the closer battle there. What about Safieniak and Thorpe, our last battle to come to the finish line?
They are coming down the start-finish line as we, the back straight towards turn 17 as we speak. Thorpe has got a decent run on Sofniak, and it all comes down to turn 17. What line do you take, and how do you get that run off the corner to the start-finish line? As Thorpe dives it in pretty deep, goes wide. Oh, I think he dove a little too wide.
Both of them came in pretty deep there. Thorpe was not quite close enough, knew he had to dive it in deep, and he pushed out very well wide. So Safieniak holds on to 7th. Thorpe gets 8th, and there's just 3 more cars, I think, out there to take the checkered flag. Brownsy 1 lap down. We'll see the flag next, and then Bean and Mullerman, who had to jump in for a little bit more fuel, potentially. But almost everyone across the finish line there, and we saw some great battles.
Yeah, we really did see some great battles to start the race with John D. Allen, Mitchell Peake, and Alex Albert all led well. That battle for 4th was super intense with Hall, Ellison, and Nicely really putting on a show. And even further back in the field with Sofniak and Thorpe. Sofniak with a great drive. He slow and steady won the race for him. He didn't make many mistakes. He kept his pace where it needed to be, and he made a good drive for 7th there. So battles all up and down your field, and John D. Allen putting on a show with a dominant drive.
Yeah, and Chris Knisley, 6th place, burning down those rear tires like he won. So After torturing the front tires, I think all race, he's decided the rear tires get the treatment too, and he's painted a lot of the runoff area black out there. But we'll run down that finishing order once again. And John D. Allen, your winner by 26 seconds. Once he got clear in the pit stops, there was no one catching him. There was no one matching his pace, and he bolted away for a fantastic win. 24 laps completed and a total time of 1 hour, 1 minute and 47 seconds. Head of Albert and Justin Hall, the teammates, finishing in that order there. And Albert, not in touch with John D. Allen, did not have his pace here, but still gets the points for second and doesn't let Allen run away too far with the championship. Hall, good result. I didn't want to jinx him during the race, but he stands on the podium, so well done him. Peake fourth. Allison gets fifth. Nicely sixth. Finnick seventh. Aaron Thorpe gets eighth. The last of our finishing runners, Jacob Beenan in 9th, Lee Mullman in 10th, Joel Brownsey in 11th. Two cars we saw come to the track that didn't take the start of the race, didn't participate, Bradley Adams and David Palermo. Maybe we'll see them in future rounds. I certainly hope so. Let's look. Are we able to grab our race winner?
Yeah, let me go down to the paddock and see if I can get him.
We should indeed have John D. Allen with us briefly. He is around for us to have a word with.
There you go.
And we got him now. John, the win is the points, and I guess that's probably what you're thinking about at this stage in the championship. So a race well run.
Yeah, had loads of time to think about it between last round and this one, the biggest gap in the season. And yeah, I came into tonight mildly frustrated for some non-related things, but just kind of channeled that into pace and kind of found another gear. So it felt great.
Well, we saw a lot of you in the first half of the race and not so much in the second half of the race, as you kind of ran away with it a little bit. But I think the one thing I really got to ask you about is that when you decided to come down on pit road there, maybe sort of faking out your opponent.
Yeah, I kind of we were starting to break away with Mitchell in the lead, and if I was smart, I probably would have just stayed behind him until the pit stops. I like to be able to kind of dictate when I go in and go in alone. And once I went in front, not only was he figuring out a little bit here, a little bit there, where we may have had a difference earlier, and he was hanging on really well. Now all of a sudden he's learning all the tricks, if there are any. And I thought the only place I'm going to break the draft is with a good pit stop. So tried to pull the little old do-si-do there, and it worked out.
Only a couple rounds left in this championship. What are you thinking? I mean, you had 26 seconds ahead of Alex Albert. There's been some races we've seen where you guys have been really, really close. You can be able to keep this up?
Yeah, I think at this point, I don't know, there's some drop races involved. I've only maybe used one or two of them. So I think I'm sitting pretty good, which is good because I may very well have to miss a couple here of the next few. But I think I'm in a good spot. And yeah, I think the long layoff clearly had effect on some, because obviously I'm not used to seeing Albert back there, towing the rest of the field. So I'm sure that will change next round, and we'll be back at it nip and tuck.
Well, congratulations once again, and hopefully we'll see you at least a few of the remaining rounds, and I'm sure you'll be there if you can.
Absolutely. Yep. Every time I can. Thanks a lot.
Well, there we go. I think that just about wraps it up for the post-race coverage here. Round 11, the ChampCar Sim Series was a good one. It was a fantastic race with some, I hate to say the phrase championship implications, but certainly it had them there. And it's what we like to see in this racing. Some bit of pack racing, a little bit of strategy, good hard racing that rewards drivers who can be fast and clean and give a little bit of respect and space to their fellow competitors. Well done to all of our drivers. Well done to our podium. Thank you so much to everyone who's tuned in to the video game soon on HJVC. Really look forward to Sim Series, but our other coverage